Today's video was actually supposed to be an art video, but I have been feeling a little, the well has run dry a little bit, so I'm going to basically use today as taking a break and working on some stuff for my website, and also trying to do promo work for the book boxes. If you saw this post or saw this picture on any of my social media, then you know that I now am doing a book box, and I'm going to try to sell it on TikTok Shop, my shop on my website, and also try to get more of this stuff out there. So that's that. Hi everyone, my name is Kathleen Lyons here at the Magic Library, and today we're going to be talking about writing and tips and tricks that have basically helped me in sort of unconventional ways. So before we get started on everything, I actually want to talk about this picture right here and also these two other pictures. These three items are going to be available on my shop soon, and hopefully on TikTok Shop. I'll let you know when the TikTok Shop is up and running. But if you want to buy these items, hopefully by the time this video is out, I will have everything put up on the website. You go to my website, to the Magic Library shop page, and basically get a signed copy of the book of your choice. You can get a sticker pack, or you can get a book box set. And I hope that you guys enjoy it. The link for my website and all my socials are down in the Linktree link in my description. But right now, let's get to talking about these tips and tricks that have basically helped me out. So a little bit of backstory that sort of goes behind the topic of this video. I was very much fortunate to do a writing workshop for the middle school that I went to, for a bunch of kids who were very interested in writing. And I was asked a lot of questions about the subject of writing and what to do storytelling wise. And at the time, I sort of fumbled through those questions because first off, these were very mature questions that even I didn't ask when I was their age. So if they were asking those questions now, they're going to do fine in this industry. If any of those kids are watching right now, hi, I still remember you guys, and I hope that you guys are basically embracing the ups and downs of your writing journey. Just stick with it. You guys are doing great. But going back and thinking about those questions and questions that I probably would have had when I was their age, I came up with a very interesting list of tips. So we're going to get into basically 4 tips just to start us out of basically what to do to get started writing. This will probably be a multi-video series just because that one topic of how do I get started writing and what do I do along the line, it's a very broad subject and a lot of stuff can be either talked about or missed. So we're going to go at it basically one segment at a time. So let's talk about the first segment. The first segment is basically, what is your what if question? Your what if question is basically going to be the beating heart and center point of your story. And Brandon Sanderson sort of disagrees because a story is multiple ideas. And I do agree with that. But the reason I ask about the what if question is because whenever I do my stories, this question seems to come up more often than you think. To give a good example, Arborea Lux. How did I come up with Arborea Lux? My what if question for that story actually came from a ASMR story that I was listening to in order to help me sleep. I listen to a lot of ASMR in order to help me sleep. Most of the time it's storytelling, other times it's like listener X character, like whether it's an original character or whether it's just a character with a story. It's very, very interesting, and I love listening to those. The one ASMR story in particular that I was listening to actually had to deal with the listener somehow being sent to purgatory and basically traversing a sort of dead forest marsh, coming upon some bandits and then getting saved by a mysterious cloaked figure. For those of you who have actually read the first chapter of Arborea Lux, Does this sound familiar? Luxalia is saved in Chapter 1 by a mysterious word figure when she's attacked by Hellbeast. And they sort of grow a little burgeoning romance from that point. So I already had that idea in my head. And then there was the what if question, and I forget how I came up with it, but it was stuck in my head for a while. And that question was, what if during the Salem witch trials there actually were magic users who were killed, and the other side of the equation, since they were supposed to be healers, the protectors being the other side, what if the protectors and the one who gave the power to those protectors basically went on a rampage, killing those responsible and sort of cursing themselves to become vampires because the magic that they were given was twisted by grief and raw rage. And that's how I came up with my vampire aspect for Arborealux. So combining that little bit of origin with the story idea that had basically been in my head ever since I had first started the story, I combined those two, and that's how I came up with sort of the premise behind Arborealux. But I still had a lot of little world building tips to do. I still had to come up with characters. I still had to come up with the society of the city. I still had to come up with like where vampires stand and where humans stand in a vampire-based society. And I did a little bit more research, and most of that research was major media consumption around the time. And that's how I came up with Arborealux. So Brandon Sanderson was right about the fact that a story is basically a culmination of multiple ideas. And your story, depending on what kind of story that you're writing and everything lengthwise, it's going to be multiple ideas as well. But the first question that always should come up whenever you're coming up with a story and everything is the big what if question. So that what if question is going to basically branch off and fracture out into several other little questions that you may need to do research on. And that basically leads on to the next segment. Oh God, I sneezed near at the end of that last segment, and oh God, that hurt my nose. Oh my heavens. So, we talked about the what if question. The what if question basically branching out into all these other questions about what's the world going to be like, who are the characters going to be, what's their journeys and everything. We're going to get to the character aspect of this later on, but right now we're going to be talking about what I like to call rabbit hole research. For anyone who has ADHD, you probably know the term internet rabbit hole intimately. It's basically when you have a little hyperfixation that's like budding in your brain, and you become so overwhelmed with curiosity that you basically take out your phone or you get onto your computer to go to Google, and you basically type out a question relating to that topic, and it basically goes from there. This is called rabbit hole research. At least, that's what I call it. Rabbit hole research does a lot to actually help you if you have ADHD, or even if you don't, to come up with your story and how you world build. For example, when I first came up with Arborealux, I had to do a lot of research about the time period in between 1692, when the Salem witch trials took place, and the Victorian era. I had to do this because in the story, these vampires technically aren't immortal, they're more long-lived. How many generations is that for a long-lived person to basically live until the 1800s? Well, that entire topic turned into quite the rabbit hole. And along with the aggressive media consumption of the anime I was watching at the time, I knew for a fact that since it was Victorian era, I had to put in a little bit of classism as well. The anime I was watching at the time is, in fact, Moriarty the Patriot. And I will say this, it's a very good show. I really want there to be another season. I want them to continue it. Pretty please. Primarily because the the story of like how Moriarty was not really a villain, but more of a criminal, a consulting criminal for hire when it came to the wrongdoings of the upper class society. That sort of struck a chord with me, especially in terms of what if that entire class system was mostly vampires. Combining that social structure with vampires and how their age and generation basically meant what privilege they could have in everything, basically became the framework for the city of Obsidia Terma. Because at the top you have the Morgenstern family. The Morgenstern family, who is the direct descendant of Lucienne Morgenstern and the progenitor of the vampires, basically. Then you have the High Bloods. These are basically the descendants of those original disciples. And then you have the aristocrats who are more than, like, I think how I put it, it was more than like 4 or 5 generations. But most of the vampires and everything that you see, they're going to end up being pretty much aristocrats. Then you have the Low Bloods. The Low Bloods are anywhere from 2nd generation to, I think, 5, I think is what I said. And that's basically those who are still grappling with their with basically being a vampire and what comes from it. But it was like, that's the majority of the populace. And that's basically the low class. And then, of course, below that you have the you have the hybrids and you have the humans. The hybrids being basically the Dampier and also the half demon spawn of a very, 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 very Robert Baratheon-esque descendant of Morgenstern. And that's I'll get onto that later. But that basically became the framework of that, and also how I wanted the city to be structured. And I could do an entire video about how I did the structure of Obsidia Terma and of the world of the last Astroblood Chronicles. I could do an entire video about it and I still wouldn't be done, because there's a lot that goes into world building. And most of that world building came from rabbit hole research. So here's a little tip if you're afraid of going down the internet rabbit hole. It's okay to have a lifeline, but sort of don't be afraid to get lost in the research process, primarily because whatever you find, like, even if it doesn't sort of resonate with the story that you're dealing with, still write those down or save that tab, because that could become a story idea for another time to work on. Just make sure that you don't get out of control with it like I did, because I have literally 17 manuscripts that I have started and I have not finished, and I am still very much working on Anime Next-Up. So you have your what if question and you have begun doing your rabbit hole research. Well, this third thing is going to sort of make or break you, depending on how well of a rule follower you are. And this third thing is basically, what genre are you looking to write? Genre is the category for a story and the motifs and themes that you use. And you can probably think of a few right off the top of your head. For romance, you have to have a sort of budding romance subplot, or any other sort of romance, whether it's like enemies to lovers, friends to lovers, fake dating, why choose, all that. And that's just romance. There's several other ones as well, including the fantasy genre. Arborea Lux and the Seraphim Trilogy, my published works, are all what I've coined the term to be paranormal dark fantasy. And the reason I've called it that is because there are paranormal aspects, but it's more of dark fantasy than it is paranormal. The only reason I put in paranormal is because if you're an outsider looking in, this all will look strange to you. It's paranormal. Now, in the stories, there are budding romances that turn from enemies to lovers, friends to lovers, strangers to lovers in one case. But it's like, that romance is only a subplots. It is not the full plot. Jenna Marassi talks about subplots on here on her own channel called Writing with Jenna Marassi. And she goes into a lot of sort of like unbiased tones, and I highly recommend it for anyone who's looking for an unbiased opinion of basically how to do it. And she's very dry in her delivery and everything, but she's to the point, and she's one of those people that is like, hey, it's okay to do things, or hey, you need to stop this to stop yourself from making a mistake. So I highly recommend her as well. But when it comes to genre, there are some rules that come with each. And some rules, depending on what your story is, can be broken. I sort of break the paranormal dark fantasy genre rules a bit, because in the world of the last Astrophyte Chronicles, the paranormal technically isn't all that out of the ordinary. It is something that their society has dealt with for generations, and at this point it's just an everyday thing. It's a typical Tuesday. But I still call it paranormal because what else are you supposed to call a society that has wolf shifters, vampires, half witches and half demons, and basically these two sides of the same coin where you have some healers and some protectors? It's very much there is paranormal aspects in the series, but at the same time it's sort of just part of everyday routine. So I technically break that rule. One rule that I could not break is that I could not label my books as a paranormal dark fantasy romance. Primarily because while there is romance involved, it's very much a very like underlying subplot. It is sort of brought to the front of the conversation later on in later chapters or even in later books, but at the same time, it's still very much a subplot. So technically what my books are they're paranormal dark fantasy with a romantic subplot as well as a mystery subplot. There is an aspect of mystery as well of sort of horror in all of the books. There is some blood and gore. There are suggestive and very dark themes that are sort of mentioned or implicated, but not really talked about in great detail. There is literally a disclaimer in Seraphim Requiem about chapter 17, if you are wondering. We'll get down to trigger warnings in probably another video, but right now we're talking about the rules of genre. When it comes to genre, you can pretty much do whatever you want within the confines of that genre. All the major genres that we know of, for example, fantasy, romance, mystery, and horror, these are sort of the four main categories that are under fiction. And under those are a bunch of subgenres. And let's just say that that is a rabbit hole in and of itself, and I do not recommend it. It's a long, dark, lonely road. You do not want to go down it unless you really want to, like, oh, I don't know, write a writing craft book or something. But when it comes to genre, you also have to think about the themes and motifs of your story. What is the story that you're trying to tell? How well does it mesh with the lens of genre that you're telling the story through? It's very much a subjective question, and it's one that you probably need to think about a lot, especially as you're coming up with ideas for your story and what you want to include and what you don't want to include. Or even the more terrifying aspect, what you can't include in some genres. Motifs, emotions, and themes are what we're talking about in this fourth tip. What kind of story are you wanting to tell? Is it a story of self-discovery? Is it a revenge plot? What kind of story are you wanting to tell? When Hunter M. Johnson and I were actually talking about this very same topic during the Written Realms, the Art of Storytelling panel at Iron City Comic Con this year, he actually posed this question to me, and he sort of did it underhandedly. His exact words of the question was, how did you know what story you wanted to write? And at the time, I really didn't have an answer. Because for me, it was sort of like I was jumping on a story, I was jumping on that path, and I was following it towards its end. Because I have ADHD, it very much is how I write. But looking back at Arborea Lux and what I wrote into it and all the different revisions that I did for that and for the Seraphim trilogy, I want to say that that story in particular is one of self-acceptance, self-discovery, and basically telling yourself that it's okay to be what you are. You do not have to be ashamed. And for anyone who knows me personally, they probably know that I sort of attribute this to what I grew up with in the church. I won't go into that topic right now. Of course, the moment some of my family members see this, they will grow very concerned and they will basically question me about it. But the thing about it is that you're sort of is that throughout my life, I was sort of pushed into a mold, and it was a mold I really didn't fit into. So I had to pretty much, to be a little bit cliche about it, break that mold. And it took a lot of time for me to find out who I really was as a person, because I was so focused on what everybody else was doing that I didn't really focus on myself. A perfect example that I always talk about is I've always known that I've wanted to be a writer since I was 5 or 6, but when I told people that, they said, you need to get a real job so that you can do this on the side. But at that time, it was very much saying you don't have enough talent for this, or you can't do this. So it wasn't until high school that I decided to just get back into writing for fun that I realized that I technically still can do this. I just have to believe in myself. And Dad, I know you're watching. Do not think that you sort of dissuaded me from being a writer as a kid. That was more of my own self-sabotage than anything else. Because I don't know why I still have that self-sabotage. Just don't worry about it. You're fine. You did well. You are an awesome dad. I'm just saying. But this series for me holds a very dear place in my heart because of all the things that I've gone through and all the topics that I've sort of been, what is the word? Dadgum. Exposed. Exposed is the word I was looking for. All of these topics and things that I've been exposed to over my life, and sort of realizing that what some things are taught is more of a biased opinion than anything else, it very much basically told me that, hey, this needs to be a story that needs to be told. And for Arborea Lux, who is basically being told what she is, but she doesn't know what that means, she has to go on that journey of self-discovery for herself to find out what it means to be an Asterblood. And basically, how does she keep herself hidden so none of the people that she's grown fond of are in danger for keeping the secret? And Luxalia's story in Arborea Lux is basically the story that I wish I had read as a child, of where you're sort of told what you are, but you sort of break that mold and you embrace who you are. You embrace who you are, like, very, very passionately. And while there is sometimes of imposter syndrome, you very much can bounce back from that when you have the proper support. And in the Seraphim trilogy, when we're talking about journeys of self-discovery and acceptance, there is the story of Zyla, who has been basically discriminated against from a very young age, and that's why she sort of feels cynical around other people. That's why she doesn't trust anybody else besides her very close family. Her very close family being her adopted father and his partner, and unfortunately her sort of adopted brother, who sort of goes psycho. She was told all her life that her eyes were basically it was a reminder of a horror that happened in the past of Obsidia Terma. And it's basically, before they even got to know her, they judged her for it. But, a little bit of spoiler at the end, by the end of the story, she learns to accept herself, to embrace this power, to basically use it to save the family that she has found, and the family that she very deeply loves, that being her partner, her best friend, and the entire pack that has basically accepted her for who she is. she basically finds a way to not only discover herself in her entirety, but also accept herself and use that as a sort of grounds to fight. And the stories that I'm working on right now for the last part of the series, Anime Nixon being the companion novel to our Boreal Lux, which is it's told from Silas's point of view. It's basically his entire thing of self-acceptance, because he knows what he is. He doesn't have to discover himself, but he's tired of the label, and he's sort of gotten to the point where he self-sabotages himself, believing that he can only ever be what people have told him. So he is learning by interacting with Luxalia that it's okay to be it's okay to be a bastard. It's okay to be a Dampier. It's okay to hate your family. Just know that family is sort of what you have, and in this society, family is what you stand on. He learns to accept himself because of what Luxalia has shown him, that she is very fiercely and bravely, and sometimes a little bit foolishly, herself. And she is this woman who's gone from being a meek thing that he found in the Pale Woods to being this like beacon of hope and beacon of, maybe I can find out what happened to my sister, maybe I can accept myself, and maybe, just maybe, I can have a future with Luxalia because I love her. And the last book in the series is ironically where everything starts. It's going to be the tale of Morgenstern, how Lucien and Adelaine basically got their powers, how they became the progenitors of the Asterbloods and of the vampires and everything, or rather at this time as they're known, the Protectors, and how one simple tragedy basically turned everything on its head, and figuring out that what you do in terms of a tragedy that happens, it changes you. So, and that's basically all these stories within the world of the last Asterblood Chronicles. They're all stories of self-acceptance. That's the story I wanted to tell. A little bit of a long ways of talking about it and everything, but hey, I've got to plug my books and everything. If you're interested in the books, all of the links for Amazon and everything will be down in the description below, and Seraphim Requiem will soon be up on my website, so minor plug. But all of that being said, what is the story you want to tell? Do you want to tell a story of adventure and finding yourself? Or is it a story of basically how one person is going to change your perspective on things? What is the story that you want to tell? That story and the emotions, motifs, and themes that sort of go along with that story, along with all of your research and the genre and your big what if question, these are the building blocks of your story, and you can assemble them however you want. It's your story, so have fun with it. And that's all I've got for today. I was very, very passionate about this, because when you're talking about the beginning of storytelling, you sort of forget the building blocks that you start out with. You're more focused on the journey. And don't worry, we'll be getting onto the journey in another video, basically talking about what pitfalls and what little roadblocks that you may hit along the way, and basically how to overcome them. These 4 tips that I have and everything, I very much liked them, and I love the little terms that I came up with them and everything, like the what if question, rabbit hole research, what is genre, and what is the story you want to tell. All of these are very important questions that need to be asked when you're coming up with your story. And while they may sound intimidating, they really aren't. It's more of a subjective thing of, hey, what do you want to do? And it's your responsibility as a writer and a storyteller to basically take this raging bull by the horns and keep going. To basically write it until you get to the end. You may fall off the path a few times, but What's important is that you know when to get back on and you know when to continue. This was getting very philosophical for just a simple video, but I had a lot of fun shooting this video, especially, and I actually went back to having no script this time. Yay! I like ad-libbing like this, and it's like just like doing stuff that comes off the top of my head. I don't actually read well from scripts out loud, not unless I've memorized it. And I tried doing the script thing, but it was just like, no, I'm just gonna go back to ad-libbing. But that is all for the video. Thank you guys so much for watching till the end. I don't know how long this video is going to be. I suspect it's probably going to be very long. But if you're interested in more videos like this, or you have a topic that you want me to talk about, put it down in the comments below. And while you're at it, like and subscribe, because I'm going to try my very best to keep a video coming out once a week. I have merch that is on sale on my website. You can find it down in the description below. Seraphim Requiem, the end of the Seraphim trilogy, is now out on Amazon, and it will soon be available on my website, because there you can actually get it signed, and you will get a random sticker, a bookmark, and also a print. And if you decide to get the box set or a merch box for Arboreal Lux or the Seraphim trilogy, you will get the entire line of prints. You'll get 2 bookmarks, a sticker pack filled with all of the stickers that I designed for the series, and maybe you'll get some little goodies in there as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. I love doing videos like this. And I hope that everything will continue to go on. If you haven't already, follow me on all of my socials, including my Substack. All of those will be down in the description below in my link tree. I have a very, very beautiful link tree that just shows all of my links. It shows my Amazon list for where all my books are. It shows my website. It shows my Substack, my Ko-Fi. I'm hoping to actually do some stuff on Ko-Fi later on in the year. I'm actually wanting to hopefully start a store out to sell more of my artwork on there. So stay tuned for that. And I don't know if the link is live, but there is also a link to my Patreon. I'm hoping to get a very firm following of Patreon subscribers, and also subscribers on here and all of my other channels. And of course, you can find all of this information and the links in the description below in my link tree. Thank you guys again so much for watching. This is Kathleen Lyons here at the Magic Library, and I'll see you next week in another video. Bye guys.